Hey everyone, this week we're going to be getting a first impression of Luminar Neo photo editing software. So recently Skylum sent me a license key for their software Luminar Neo, and I thought it'd be good to go through it today and not do so much of a review but more of a first impressions, looking at the key features, the key selling points that Skylum advertise on their website for Luminar. So the usual upfront disclaimer about the products I review. I have been sent the license key for this. I believe I'm allowed to keep it, but I'm not being paid anything else, so all my opinions are my own and I'm not obliged to say anything in particular. I am quite positive about most of the things I review on my channel, and that's not because I am obliged to say anything. It's more that I am quite choosy about what I review, and this is no exception. I've read good things about Luminar, so I am mostly expecting to be positive about it, but I will point out anything that can be improved if I find them. I'll be comparing this to Lightroom mostly because that's what I usually use, and I'm not going to go through every single feature today. That would take forever and this is already going to be a long video. Instead, I'm going to look at the key features like I said and just give an overview of how they work, and hopefully I can look at some of these features and others in more detail in future videos. There will be a discount code at the end of the video, so if you're wanting to get this software, make sure you stick around to the end and get that code, and I'll give you a link where you can go and get it. But I'll stop waffling now. Like I said, it is going to be long. I've tried to cut out most of the waffle, but it's still going to be quite long. So let's jump in and have a look. Okay, so when you launch Luminar, this is what you're greeted with. We've got three categories at the top: Catalogue, Presets and Edit. On the right hand side you've got some metadata info for the images, which are shown here in the middle, and if you want to add new photos you can click this blue button up here, and underneath we've got some categories which will just group images into things like all photos, recently added, etc. If we click on presets with this image selected, we've got a number of one-click solutions here that work very much like Lightroom. So we can just click on one of these and it'll quickly apply a number of parameters to our image to change the look. So they work very much as expected. But I'm going to come back to Catalogue and down to this image here, because what I really want to look at is Edit. So with that image selected, we'll click on Edit. And this image was captured at Big Sur in California quite recently. I made a video where I edited this in Lightroom, so if you want to go back and watch that one, I'll put a link up top. But today, obviously, we're going to be editing this in Luminar. So I'm going to pull out a few of the functions more specifically after this. But what I want to do with this one is just quickly show some of the main tools for developing a raw image. So under Essentials, you've obviously got this one here called Develop, and next to it, it's got a little symbol that says Raw. So we're obviously going to use that to edit our raw image. When we click on that, it opens up this panel, and we've got a number of sliders. We've got camera profile at the top, so we can start from a different camera profile if we want, such as Vivid or Adobe Standard. I'm just going to choose the Luminar default. And then the sliders work very much like Lightroom. We can bring them to the left for a negative effect, in this case exposure, and we can bring them to the right for a more positive effect. Okay, so what I want to do first is bring down the highlights because the sky is way overexposed. So I'm just going to bring down the exposure and the highlights until that sky starts to look a little bit better. Obviously that's going to make my foreground too dark, but we'll deal with that in a moment. Temperature, I'm going to bring that up slightly. Also a little bit of tint towards the more purple end, and I'm going to bring up vibrance just to about there. Okay, so what I want to do now is select all of this foreground area that's too dark and then bring up some of the shadow detail there. Now for most of the functions, if we click on colour for example, we'll see there's an option that says masking. The same under structure, and we can click on that, select a mask, and then start editing selectively. However, under Develop Raw, you'll see we don't have that option. I don't know if this is a bug or I'm just not understanding this properly. This is the first time I've used the software, so it might be my lack of understanding. But the only way I've found to be able to get masking underneath develop is to select another feature first. So for example, structure, click masking, apply a mask, which I'm not going to use. And now we see that develop doesn't have raw next to it, and we can click on that and we do have the masking option. So perhaps there's another way to do this to get the option for masking. If you know, please leave a comment below, but that's the only way I've found so far. So we'll click linear gradient and we'll highlight this foreground area like that. Now we can click on adjustments and we can start to bring up the shadows to bring some detail back there, perhaps a little bit of exposure as well. Now I'm going to close that little palette there. I'm going to come down to this one that says landscape. Here I can bring up the golden hour slider. Obviously that's emulating golden hour light. I did capture the image at golden hour, so it seems appropriate. Dehaze works in a similar way to how it does in Lightroom. Bring that up and you introduce more saturation and contrast. Foliage enhancer, obviously not going to use that now, but if you've got a woodland scene, it will help bring out detail and highlights in that foliage. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now. I'm not going to do a lot to this image. I just want to quickly show the develop tools and a few other different features such as landscape at this stage. What I am going to do though is come up to enhance here, and I'm going to use the accent AI slider. So that just changes many parameters all at once, such as tone and clarity and things like that. Just really helps the image to pop. Brings a lot of detail back in this foreground area. And I'll also bring up the sky enhancer a bit. It'll just bring a bit more colour and contrast into the sky. I'm going to put a vignette on this because I like vignettes. And finally, I'm going to come down under creative. I'm going to click on sun rays. Now if I click place sun center, I can move this little dot just over my sun, bring up this amount slider, and if I play around with these sliders, I can create quite a funky effect. Now this is obviously entirely creative. This wasn't captured in the original image in any way, but it is quite fun to play with. And one thing to note is that if you want to go back and look at any of the edits that you've made, up at the top here, next to tools, you've got this option here, edits, and underneath here are all the different parameters that we've changed. So if we do want to go back and edit that raw, we've still got develop raw down here, and now we can just apply more changes to that raw file. Then when we go back to tools, those changes have been applied. You see the sky's darker now. Okay, so let's take a look at another image. So the image I want to choose is this one here. This image is from Durdle Door in Dorset here in the UK, and it was captured at sunrise, although the sun was hidden behind the rock formations here, so there isn't a lot of the golden hour light coming through there. And the sky was quite bland, just blank blue, not many clouds apart from these low ones at the back on the horizon there. So what I'm going to do with this one is use the sky tool, Sky AI. So this will replace the sky, similar to how Photoshop replaces the sky. If we drop down sky selection here, we can choose different ones, and it'll automatically detect the sky and pop that in there for us. Again, it's personal preference whether or not you're going to do something like sky replacement. As I've said in previous videos, I don't mind as long as it's a creative image, i.e. it's a work of art and not documentary or journalism or anything like that. You can do whatever you want with your image as long as you're upfront about it. Play away and create whatever you think looks good. Having said that, I don't use sky replacement in any of the images I put on my website, my portfolio, but it is quite fun to play around and change these. So I'm going to go with that one. And the really cool thing about Sky AI, which I'm not sure that Photoshop does, is it will work with reflections as well. So you'll see if we choose, for example, this sky, it also affects the rest of our image as well. So the water will reflect some of those colours in the sky. If we change that to a more pinky, see we've got some pinks in the water now. And you can control those parameters as well. You've got reflection here where you can change the reflection amount. You've got water blur, and you've got a number of parameters that you can play around with. You've got relighting, which will affect how the rest of the image has been altered to blend in with that new sky. You can change the sky itself so it fits better within your image, looks more plausible. So it's quite powerful. You've got a lot of options here, and the masking is quite good. It seems to have made a good job of blending that sky in without overlapping the important areas of the Durdle Door rock formation. So I'm quite pleased with that. Okay, so the next image we're going to take a look at is this one. This is from a recent video too, captured at Wyminbrook. It was a lovely foggy morning. We've got all the nice autumn colours, and I wanted this to look quite soft. I reduced the clarity, texture. I wanted it to have that really nice ethereal glow to make it look like a really enchanted woodland scene. And the reason I've chosen this one is because it's got that soft look, because what I want to look at now is the structure AI feature. So this works a little bit like clarity and texture in Lightroom, and we can introduce more of that by bringing this amount slider up to the right. Boost will help increase that effect. And you can see, even in a really soft image like this, it will bring a lot of structure and texture into it. So we can turn that on and off here. That's how it was before. That's how it is with the boosted structure. And you can come the opposite way as well if you want it to look even softer. Just like that. And I just want to show you quickly the atmosphere AI feature. So with this, we can choose different atmosphere effects such as fog, mist and haze. I'm going to choose fog and bring that amount up, and you see it will just bring it into the back of our image here. And I think this is quite interesting because it's identified the depth within the image. It knows that this is foreground, and a realistically foggy image will have more fog as it recesses into the distance within the image. So the further or the deeper you get into the image, the more fog you will see, and that's how this is working. So that's quite good. If we choose different ones, we get that effect in different areas. So layered fog is more in the middle of the image, and we can also change that with depth as well. So if we want it at the bottom of the image, we can. And again, we can bring up the depth, and we can fill the entire image if we want. But it's nice just to be able to get it in the right areas, because that will help to make the image look more plausible. So again, it is a very creative feature. It's kind of cheating in a way. I like to use it just to emphasize what's already there. So I've got an already foggy image, but this will just help to emphasize it, and I think that's okay. So next up, we're going to look at this image here. This was captured at the wedding of friends. We were up in Scotland and we had this fantastic outdoor wedding in the Highlands there, next to Loch Katrine. And what I want to do with this one is use the Relight AI feature. So what this does is what it says on the tin really, it relights the scene. And that's useful because it will help to bring out some of the shadow detail in the foreground, or it can bring down the brightness in the background, and that can help to separate your subjects from the background and things like that. And you would have to use a lot of masking normally to do this kind of thing in Lightroom or Photoshop. But we can see here, if we bring the brightness near, slide it up to the right, that will bring some detail back into the bride and groom there. And then we've got brightness 5. If I bring that down, it'll start to darken the background. So we don't want to overdo this, but just by adding a little bit of subtle brightness changes to the foreground and background, we can really make the image pop. And we can change the depth as well. So you see on the ground there, it really is like relighting the scene. So this can be quite powerful, and you're going to get different effects with different images. It's not going to work with every image perfectly. If we take a look at this image, for example, and we go to Relight AI, you'll notice here where the hair of the lion meets the sky, we have got some issues with the masking there, and that's tough for any kind of software, to be fair, and we might have to go into that with the masking tools, and we could use a brush perhaps. But it does do a fairly decent job. It's not going to work in every circumstance, but it's going to improve over time, I would imagine, with updates, and I could see myself using that quite a lot. We're going to come all the way to the top now, choose this image here, go to edit. So a very uninspiring image, it's just a snapshot really captured in Germany. But I've chosen this one because I want to highlight the power lines removal tool. So if we come to erase here under essentials, down here we've got objects removal and we've got remove power lines. So if I just click that, thinks about it for a short time, and there we go, we've got rid of the power lines now. So it's done a fairly good job if we turn that on and off. If we just zoom in, we notice there are just a few lines here that's been left over, but we can fix that if we use the brush tool here. So we're still under erase, and we can just draw over those lines there, and click erase, and it will get rid of those. We've just got one more there, get rid of those. So that's really quick, and it's done a pretty good job. The one thing you've got to watch out for, if we click on this image here, and we go to the power lines removal tool, we see it's got rid of that now, but it's also removed a few branches down here. If you notice when I turn this on and off, it's also removed the branches and this little line on the side of the train. So sometimes the AI is just a little bit too keen, so that's something to watch out for. But in general, it does a really good job. And also underneath the erase panel, we've got dust spot removal. So I've got this image here, captured at Mamtor. It was a great sunrise morning, not much detail in the sky, and that has meant that this big horrible dust spot really stands out. So we can just go to erase, remove dust spots, and that'll just disappear like that. Now the only thing is, I think there are also a couple of dust spots here and here, and it hasn't got rid of those ones. So again, we can just use the brush tool under erase just to paint over that one and that one. Click erase, and those are sorted out now. So again, very quick, very powerful, and does the job. And finally, I'm just going to come down and select this image here. This was another one captured in California, a Big Sur, along the Pacific coast there. And what I want to highlight here is the Mask AI function. So if we go to develop, masking, we've got all of the options that we can choose manually, such as brush or a linear gradient mask, radial gradient, but we've also got Mask AI. So if I click on that, it starts to analyze the image, and you get this rather funky animation while it does that. And now we can select these options here. So we've got sky, you see it selects the sky area, or we can choose water, and it does a pretty good job of working out where all those areas are. And then with that selected, I can go to adjustments like before, and now I can bring up the shadows, or I can change the exposure, and it's a very quick way of just working out where all those areas are. And if you want to add to this, you can just tidy it up with a brush. So we can just paint in there, for example, where it's missed it slightly, or down here. But by and large, it's done a pretty good job of working it out all by itself. So again, another powerful AI function, and I can see that being very useful. So there you go, that's an overview of the key features of the Luminar Neo software. I have really enjoyed using it. I think it is really good software. It's really easy to use, it's quite intuitive, and you're going to get good results really quickly. It's obviously aimed at amateurs and hobbyists because it's perhaps not quite as granular, and you don't get that really fine detail and fine control that you get with, say, Lightroom. So if you just want that really quick solution where it works everything out for you, you don't have to understand it too much, it's great for that. But if you're wanting more of the finer control and individual controls for very fine detail features, then something like Lightroom might be a little bit better for you. But having said that, I will use this in future, particularly things like the creative features such as atmosphere and relighting and the structure AI and things like that. Really great, works really well. All of the AI features like masking works well. It can detect the sky and the mountains and the water quite accurately, so that's great. Times when it doesn't quite get it spot on, you can just go in there with a brush tool or something and amend that. So if you are interested in purchasing Luminar Neo, I'm going to put a link down below in the comments. If you go, click on that link, and when you come to purchase either the Pro or Explore yearly packages, you can get a discount with the discount code Robert Bishop. So pop that in there and grab yourself a discount on this software. Try it out because it's great. But that's about it for this video. So if you've got this far, thanks a lot for watching. I know it's been another long one. And if you're new to the channel and you're not yet subscribed and you'd like to do so, you can click down there on the big red button or over here on my face. And that way you'll keep up to date with everything I'm doing each and every week. There's a new video every Sunday morning at 10 AM UK time. So I hope you'll catch me next week for the next one. But until then, thanks a lot everyone, and bye for now.